Prologue. The Whisper of the Sundarbans. The year is 1793. The air was a thick, humid silk, draped heavy with the scent of saline mud, blooming mangroves, and the distant metallic tang of an ancient sleeping river. Captain Elias Thorne, a man whose skin was the color of old parchment, and whose eyes held the weary gray of the Atlantic, wiped the sweat from his brow. He stood on the deck of the Serpent's Coil, watching the terrifying, beautiful tangle of the Sundarbans delta slide past. He was hunting a ghost, a cartographer named Alistair Finch, who had vanished 6 months prior with a collection of documents the East India Company considered priceless, detailed surveys of river channels, and more importantly, a complete map of the legendary 9 lost cities of the ancient Vanga kingdom. "Captain," hissed his Bengali first mate Jamil, pointing toward a narrow, almost hidden channel. "We go no further. The tide is turning against us, and the spirits of the forest do not welcome us here." "We go on, Jamil," Elias said, his voice a low, hard rasp. "Finch's last known report mentioned a ruin, a city of whispering stone just beyond this bend. He was obsessed with proving that the ancient texts were more than myth."
In the heart of London, where the River Thames coiled like a silver snake around the ambitions of men, there lived a king in waiting whose life was a contradiction. He was Henry of Monmouth, Prince of Wales, and heir apparent to the shaky throne of England. To the common folk, he was merely Prince Hal, a figure of infamous notoriety, a frequenter of taverns in the disreputable Eastcheap district, carousing with highwaymen and rogues like the enormous charismatic Falstaff. This was not the image of a future sovereign. It was a scandal, a political embarrassment to his father, King Henry IV, a monarch who had seized the crown in a bloody coup, forever haunted by the shadow of regicide. The king, gaunt and perpetually ill, watched his son's antics with despair, convinced Hal cared more for wine and low company than the weight of the imperium. What the king and most of his court failed to grasp was the depth of the prince's education and the strategic nature of his misspent youth. Henry was no fool. He was fluent in French and Latin, a scholar of both military tactics and theological debate. His taverns were not just dens of vice, they were listening posts, places where the pulse of the common people could be felt, where loyalty was bought with laughter and a pint of ale rather than gold or titles. His reputation, in a strange, subversive way, shielded him. By being the wild prince, he was underestimated by his enemies at home and abroad. The channel opened into a small, brackish lagoon. Half consumed by the relentless jungle was a massive tiered sepia structure, its stones carved with symbols no Western eye would recognize, built not just on the water, but seemingly rising out of it. On the highest remaining pinnacle, a piece of bleached white cloth was tied to a decaying flagpole. It was Finch's company scarf. "We have found him," Elias whispered, "or what remains of his folly." He knew then that this was no mere retrieval mission. He was standing on the threshold of a history that the modern world had intentionally forgotten. 200 miles north, in the bustling Mughal company port of Dhaka, Mishka Laskar moved through the teeming alleys with the effortless grace of a born navigator. At 22, she was a knowledge broker, fluent in 6 languages and possessing a photographic memory. Her father, before his suspicious demise, had been the foremost surveyor of Bengal's interior. Mishka was tracking a nervous clerk named Gopal, who carried a crude copy of the very map Elias Thorne sought, a map Mishka knew by heart, which held the secret of her own family's long-lost claim to the fertile lands of the Vanga heartland. In a perfectly orchestrated maneuver in a spice market, Mishka stole the rolled parchment from Gopal, replacing it with a blank scroll. The map fragment confirmed the location of the lost city. Crucially, Gopal had added a cryptic notation in Mughal script. "Thorne arrives, seeking the second key." Mishka's eyes narrowed. Thorne wasn't after gold. He was after the key of 3 waters, an ancient system of floodgates and diversion canals capable of irrigating or flooding vast swaths of land. If the company gained control, they would hold the very bloodline of Bengal in their hands. She knew she had to get to the city of Whispering Stone before Thorne did, not just to protect her family's claim, but to stop the cartographer's shadow from plunging Bengal into economic darkness. Chapter 2: The Architecture of Fear. The silence of the ruin, which Thorne now knew as Harikale Nagar, the city of green channels, was the weight of millennia. It was a colossal complex of interlocking canals and stepped pyramids, built not as a palace, but as a massive, long-dormant water management system. Thorne and Jamil found Finch's skeletal remains near a massive stone lever. His satchel contained his final journal, which confirmed Thorne's realization. This city is the control hub. The Vanga kings controlled the delta. The first key is the map. The second key is the mechanism. The third key, a cipher, possibly an ancient star chart or a chant. Thorne pocketed the documents. The company wanted control of the delta's hydroeconomic destiny. In a niche, he found a perfectly preserved clay tablet, the Vanga inscription, depicting the lotus trident symbol surrounded by a complex pattern of stars and river lines. The third key, the cipher, Thorne breathed. As Jamil copied the celestial lines onto paper, the faint, high-pitched whine of a steam whistle drifted through the mangrove. Company patrols had found their ship. Thorne was now a fugitive, trapped between the ancient water machine and the advancing European machine. Chapter 3: Dhaka's Serpent. Mishka's pawn shop, a hub of Dhaka's underground intelligence. She quickly deduced that the Vanga system was one of balance, designed for coexistence with the river, not domination.